So there's live, great, story, right? Like, what does it mean to live? How do you define great? And like, what's a story? I think that there's three key words in there that are infinitely deep.
On the 61st episode of Passion in Progress, founder of Live a Great Story, Zack Horvath. If you haven't seen this message anywhere, what does the phrase live a great story mean to you? Well, it definitely means a lot to Zack, and turns out a whole bunch of other people as well. It's the flagship phrase of the Live a Great Story lifestyle brand. What started out as just a simple phrase on a sticker has inspired a whole movement of people motivated to live their own great story. If you're a new listener to this podcast or you've been listening to previous episodes of the show, I hope you really enjoy the content that I'm putting out. And all I ask is that if you do get value out of this show or any of the episodes, please share it out with a friend. I really trust in the power of word of mouth. And if my podcast is special enough that you want to share it with somebody, that means the most to me. Let's get into the 61st episode of Passion in Progress with founder of Live a Great Story, Zack Horvath. What is up, Merce Nation? Javier Mercedes here for yet again another Passion in Progress show where we talk to inspiring individuals, and hopefully through hearing their story, you too are motivated to go out and pursue your passions. And speaking of stories, we are here with a man in the most bestest of best branding behind the shortest of phrases, Zack Horvath. How's it going, man?
It's great, Javier. Thanks for having me, bro.
You know, I'll just say live a great story, and then that can spur so much more conversation. That is the idea behind the stickers, your flags, all of the brand that you have. Let's just start off with, what does live a great story mean to you, man?
I think for me, live a great story really means, on my route, like my story, the idea to keep pushing your comfort zone, keep moving forward, keep learning about who you are, keep learning about who I am, what are my superpowers, what do I enjoy doing, and kind of that constant evaluation of my journey and my route, and just moving forward and really enjoying that process. I think the idea of pursuit is such an important word for me, because that's really all we have is the going, right? Like the movement. And it's not necessarily that we're going somewhere, but it's the go. And that's really, for me, what it really boils down to. And then doing that with awesome people. And it's like, how can I be around good people? How can my community be strengthened? How can we all move forward together? And really that pursuit of constant movement and doing that with good people.
Yeah, it's almost like a version of, it's about the journey, not about the finish line or the ending.
Totally.
One little anecdote I will say is, when I first met you, I told you that I had a podcast. And one of the things that you asked me right off the bat was, so what makes your podcast different from all the other podcasts that are about my topic? And I was like, you know what? I think it's about the guests and the kind of conversations that we have. But I will say there's like a lasting impact of like that one. The question in and of itself is like, yeah, what does make my podcast different than all the other podcasts and everything? And now I consider that every time I like make an episode. I think your way of thinking is, just from the little interaction that we have had, unique in a good way, and gets people inspired, just like from the little interaction that we had. With that in mind, can you talk about the community behind Live a Great Story?
Probably the coolest part about the community for Live is the diversity, because really the message attracts so many different people, and within the phrase there's so much interpretation and personalization to it. Mm-hmm. So like, business, they're like, you get really niche, like who is this for? What's the specific avatar, or like who's your ideal customer? And even though Live has defined that over and over and over again, and would continue to do that, it just the phrase and the message and kind of the simplicity of it attracts such a wide array of people. And within that difference of who it attracts, I think the coolest part is the similarities, because everybody looks different, they talk different. That's kind of like the foundation of what Live is about. But even within all those differences of age or color or background, or any of the differences, it touches on a very human element that still attracts a very similarly minded person, even though maybe they look different, or they all the differences that come about. So it's kind of a gift and a curse to have that, because we want to build a certain energy and cultivate a certain kind of image or ideal, but it really swings such a wide spectrum of audience. And so it's cool to see, young kids. I think like we get so many user generated content, UGC, from people out in the world that buy a sticker or buy a flag or whatever. And they have like their 12-year-old kid. Like yesterday, someone sent me one of this like young boy like adventuring out in the woods, right? And it was like he was with his grandmother. So his grandmother got him the flag, and they both like, he's all stoked holding this flag up. But then, the grandmother feels that kind of same relationship to those words. And so it's an interesting community. And like, I think one thing that interests me about it is just listening to all the people's story and like how that's different for everybody, but also like finding those similarities within those differences and doing that with so many different people.
Yeah, let's dive a little deeper into that, because what I find interesting is you can say that it's diverse, but when you actually see some of the montages that you put together of people, it's literally diverse. It's like, here's a person with pink hair, here's a person that's in Haiti, here's another person that's like, I don't know, by a waterfall, and then you're in Austin. It's everybody. It's everybody. So, and what I find really cool is the way that you want this community to grow together and inspire each other and live a great story. Can you maybe give some specific examples of how it's touched people's lives?
So many. So I was out to eat last night with my mom and my girlfriend, and my mom brought up this story that I haven't thought about in a long time. But it was probably one of the most impactful ones. That there was one time a sticker pops up on Instagram. Like that's kind of where the hub of Live a Great Story started. It's where most of the content comes from. Most of the people find it. It's the most deep audience. And the sticker popped up and, comment on this sticker and was like, hey, what's up? Like, and it was the one here in Austin underneath the bridge where kind of like the iconic one now. Mm-hmm. And someone had climbed out there and was like sitting over the edge, like feet dangling over the edge. And so like, hey, what's up? Like, love the picture. Like, what's the story? And the dude essentially shared that he had come to Austin and was like saying goodbye to his friend because he's about to commit suicide. And he saw that and like that diverted his path. And so like I just got chills thinking about it. And it's such a wild, like from that, obviously like life, right? Like diverting someone's life so massively to even some of the smaller ones of people leaving their jobs. I mean, there's a plethora of examples of people finding Live, taking a picture of it. It's kind of plants this seed about their story and their life and their destination. They quit a job and they text and they're like, quit my job, saw this, a couple months later, quit my job, now I'm traveling, or, now I started my business, or, relationships is such a big one too, and how people relate and like making a bigger commitment to their family or kind of their significant other or their friends even. And so a lot of broad things that have impacted people, even people getting tattoos, I think is like another crazy one, like that people find the message and it's really a reminder. A lot of times the stickers or the street art or the shirts or whatever, we call them reminders because it's really just that nudge for people to whatever that is for them. I think that's the coolest part. And so I think those are some of the ones off the top of my head that are still like not super specific, but even within those kind of travel, career, family relationships, those are kind of the broad ones, and then getting more specific within that. Those
yeah,
for sure more.
Yeah, for sure. And you were talking about that little nudge. Can you give a little taste of what that booklet that you guys were coming out with, what that was, or just some of the principles that you want to instill? What I found really cool was that you weren't just making that pamphlet, but you were like giving the story behind like all of the trial and error and feedback and making sure that the product that you brought to your community was the best thing that you could achieve at said time.
Yeah. So it's called the Live a Great Story Guide, and really at the foundation of the guide, before we knew what we were going to do. So there's about 5 of our core team that went through and kind of took a pause. We were doing so much. We got them really scattered, building like all sorts of ideas and, shiny object syndrome. So like all these different things. Like we could do this, we could travel, we could.
And this is after you guys have had some success with the brand.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. This was a year ago actually right now. And so we're like, okay, there's too much spread, like the sprawl of the brand. We need to focus this. And so essentially just started brainstorming, like, what does it mean to people? What's the feedback that we've gotten from our audience? What's the impact that it's made? What does it mean to us, like as a group? Like so much dialogue and conversation around it. And we started bouncing around, and really from what we realized is that like most people kind of have this moment or this realization where you kind of go from realizing that your life, maybe thinking that your life isn't yours. It's external impact on your life. You don't have control over it. It's that versus you cross this line and you're like, I'm the author of my story. My life is up to me. I want to live my life. And it's really like this jump of ownership. And so it's once you kind of commit to your story and making your story the best, it's really about staying on track with that. Because once you start diverting away from it and you start getting off track, it gets harder and harder to get back on track. And even for our, like the brand, we're realizing that we're getting off track. And so realizing that the biggest impact that we could make is to help people kind of figure out where they're at right now and then create an idea for how to stay on track and how to touch base with yourself and how to kind of readjust and evaluate and have that conversation or that dialogue about what's important to you and how to really just continue down that track. And so essentially the Live a Great Story guide is really a tool for people to have an important talk with themselves. So it's offline, it's no digital, it's all pen and paper. You just, put your phone in the other room and kind of sit down with yourself to figure out your values, what you're interested in, what you're passionate about, what your ideas are, and really just a tool for people to kind of drop a pin on their life and then kind of start moving in that direction. Not necessarily like, we don't tell people what to do. It's not like this is the way, this is the route, this is what you have, this is the right way. It's really for each of us to figure that out. And so we just wanted to build a tool that kind of helps people, give them that nudge to do that. And then kind of that conversation tool to keep doing that.
Can you talk about your A/B process before you came to market with it?
We had that conversation within our team. And what we did was five of us each built our own version of the guide. So there is like the original guide that's hand drawn, piece of paper folded in half, like a bunch of them, the idea is really cool. But each of us built that. So we took 5 people's ideas of what this could look like, put them all together, boiled it down, revised it again, took it into kind of a wireframe version, really ugly black and white, took that, sent it out to, I think like 40 people or something for that kind of initial one. And so we sent it out to them. A lot of people like marked it up, like printed it out. It was all digital, marked it up, circled things, left comments in the in like the notes or like in the margins or whatever, sent it back to us, took all that, put it together, came up with kind of a V2 version, gave that to a designer. The designer came up with this like, and then we obviously revised it and kind of built that out, printed 400 of those, sent those out to everybody. Those got all marked up, took that feedback, and then eventually...
How much did that cost by that time? Do you know by like ballpark?
Yeah, I think by that time we were not totally like, it was a lot of man hours. It was about 3 months of work to get 3 months of work to kind of get to that point, I think, or maybe even 4 months. A bulk of it was just man hours. So like 5 people. The entire thing, I mean, this is like really before the marketing kicked in and a lot yeah. So this is all just people that have been around for Live a Great Story for a long time, friends of friends, our people. And we wanted to put this together and really test it to make sure it worked. So we got, upwards of 400 people that contributed over this whole process to validate this idea and like really crowdsource this energy. Because if you read it, it's very pure toned. It's not top down. It's not like, authoritarian. It's question, it's dialogue. It's like a kind of more of a Socratic approach. And so that all came from like tons of people's feedback and ideas and really wanting to build it so it felt genuine and personal.
I'm curious, with that many cooks in the kitchen, feedback wise, how did you guys come up with any type of product afterwards?
It was really like the tweaking of it that it was very evident that people found certain aspects of it positive or beneficial, certain areas not so much. The dialogue, the diction, right? Like the wording and like the actual copy of it. And so we definitely like went through all of it. Like we had, even before that, the very, very, very initial part was calling people. So like hopped on the phone with, I think like 20 people, and really it was our target demographic. So I called essentially all my sister's friends, or people that were my like sisters in like that world. So mid-20s women that are like really badass movers and shakers, people are trying to build something, because I think that that's kind of where the biggest impact can be made. If we can, as a brand and really as a society, inspire and encourage women to move forward and move up and keep like that, like the whole, empowerment that's happening right now and playing a role in that, I think that's the biggest impact that we can make. And so wanting to create that tool very specifically for them. So it's, there's cuss words in there, there's like AF, there's like weird kind of things here and there that are super millennial. And so people are like, can you make this for kids? And we're like, probably, but like, don't use this one because this is not for an elementary school kid, even though we get a lot of requests for that. But yeah, I mean, it was like a full on sprint because we had a deadline to launch it. So we launched it through a Kickstarter, and then when it needed to ship out for Christmas and New Year's to help people start the New Year's off right. So from, I think like July until November, it was like a full-on sprint to make it happen and bring it to life.
How did you source your material? And if that stems all the way, if you want to tell your origin story, then sure, let's take that opportunity. But I'm curious on just like the back end, like getting the stickers, getting the buttons, getting like where did that process start?
So there's like the actual physical material, and then there's kind of the mental material, I would say. And so the content of it came from just really being on this journey, and a lot of the learning and the books and the podcasts and the videos and the TED Talks, and each of the people that helped really build that core value system for the guide and really contributed to that. We've all been on really this personal development journey for a decade, so all of us have been trying to figure out our life and our path and learning and the whole experience of that, and all the different materials that came into it. So that's kind of the high level material that I think is important, that it took so many books and so much, education and courses and inner work to get to that point of building this product. On the raw material side, most of it was already sourced. So a lot of the stickers, I think we're coming up on 350,000, maybe 400,000 stickers. So there's been a bunch of that journey of figuring out how to build stickers, sticker packs, sourcing. A lot of them have the back print on them. So they have this back print that took 100,000 stickers to figure out. That's like,
but I'm curious about that. Like, what did the first iteration of your sticker look like?
Yeah, so the go-to sticker company is Sticker Mule. So I think we started with Sticker Mule, and that was the original ones, but they're super easy. People always ask, like, what's the go-to? Like, go to Sticker Mule. You can get on there, drag and drop, really simple. They'll design it, and you can get it shipped to you pretty fast. The problem is that when you hand someone a Sticker Mule sticker and they want to peel it, it's insanely difficult to peel that sticker off. So I would hand someone a sticker and they'd be like, oh yeah, this is so rad, I want to put this on my computer. And then I'd hand it to them and they would just sit there like trying to pick it. And I would just, learn to just wait and just give people time. And
you were already thinking about the customer. That's awesome, man.
It's painful to hand someone something and someone's so excited about it, and then they can't get it off, and they're like, oh, I'll just do it later, and then they put it in their pocket. And so that's where the back slit comes from. So like, not only is there, the other thing is when you hand someone a sticker, even if they've never seen printing on the back, everybody always automatically flips it over. So it's like a weird thing that most people have never seen the back of a sticker, but if you hand it someone, they automatically flip it. So I was like, dude, that's valuable real estate. And so back print and the back slit, so it's easy to peel off. That took lots of trial and error.
Really? So you thought to put something on is there something on the back of these stickers?
Yeah.
Look at that. That's awesome. It has your info on it.
So if you hand this to someone, right?
Okay, so he just handed it to me, that for the people that are just listening. And I wasn't even thinking about it, and I turned it around. That is crazy. That is so weird. And you can tell you've handed out probably, what'd you say, like 340 some K stickers?
Yeah, probably. Yeah. We're about to order a bunch more, and I think that'll put it around 500,000.
That is so weird. Like, I'm still thinking about the fact that you handed it to me and I still flipped it around. So on the back, it says, be the hero of your story. And then it has your social stuff and a hashtag live a great story. That is really cool. So I'm thinking with this one, the crease where it's at, does that make it easier?
Well, yeah. So it's cut.
Oh, okay.
So like try to peel it off.
Well, I mean, I know it's
Yeah.
really easy.
So yeah. So that alone is huge. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So for those that are just listening, it's cut in the middle of the sticker. So if right now I could probably peel it with one hand if I wanted to, whereas the other company that you're talking about, I'm assuming you had to go up to the edge.
And people, yeah, on the edge, and people like
And you can't even do that with this. It's just really simple to do it, and it's like all symmetrical with your social. Man, it's legit. So how did you, what company are you using now to do your stuff?
Yeah. So at one point, there's kind of a 2-tiered version of this, but the stickers comes from China now. So we source it from China, and that's mainly because you can get stickers made, but the full packaging of this for them to print the stickers, cut, back print, put them in a bag, and staple it is a pretty intensive process. And so sourcing that domestically was not that easy to find. I think we could probably still find it and are still leaning towards that way, but finding them from China. So we order them,
in bulk.
Thousands, yeah.
So how long did it take to get to this point? Was it pretty soon after when you were first handing out stickers?
No, it definitely took, like, I'd say 100,000 stickers to like the back print and the back slit and the packaging. I mean, I've personally packaged hundreds of thousands, like I've touched hundreds of thousands of stickers. Like it definitely took a long time. Yeah, so it's an extensive process. Not many people, I mean, there's a lot of really cool stickers out there, but there's not many companies that have stickers as their primary product. So most people think stickers, you get them free when you order a package. You know, you order anything online, most of the time they're going to have stickers in it, or, you know, you're checking out and someone throws in a sticker or whatever. So creating kind of a brand that has that as like their primary product for the most part was searching for other companies that do that. It's not that easy. So then that comes in the packaging and everything. Like most people don't sell like a package of stickers.
And it's available on Amazon, correct?
It is.
At what point did you go from handing them out to like setting up an actual store so people could get them?
Probably like a solid 6 months, I would say, before building out like some sort of e-commerce store. Because in the very beginning, like backtracking to how it all started, essentially I bought a one-way ticket to Europe when I was 22, met all sorts of insane people from all around the world, like the conversations, dialogue, chefing in hostels with multiple languages, right? And sitting around the table drinking wine, those conversations and really that understanding that everybody's on their own journey was really the foundation of it. And so coming back from traveling, I was just inspired by that. And I grabbed a can of red spray paint and spray painted Live a Great Story on a wall. People started taking pictures of it and it started kind of spreading through Instagram. And then that's really the foundation. So from when that first Live got spray painted to actually building it out and thinking about making it a business was probably at least a year, maybe a year and a half.
When it was starting to catch fire and it spread, at what point was it, we need to create a community? Was it more that people were approaching you saying like, hey, we should start a group behind this? Or was it the other way around? Like, did you start like a Facebook page for it? Do you remember?
It's a good question about like the very beginning. I think pretty fast we started hosting events. So I think it was pretty quick that the idea for bringing people together was a big part of it.
Yeah. What went on in those events and has it changed what you see today?
Totally. So in the very beginning, the second person that I ever sent shirts to, there was a guy in Miami and he was like, yo, send me shirts. He was kind of an Instagram dude, like rooftopping guy. And so I sent him shirts and stickers and everything, and he ran with it and just like like flooded Miami with Live a Great Story. So it started popping up. And then he probably simultaneously started hosting events, and we kind of sponsored them more or less, like sent out shirts, sent out stickers, things like that. And that was really in the photography community, because there's something about this that for sure resonates with creatives and photographers.
Mm-hmm.
And so he kind of ran with it. So there's still Live a Great Story stickers in places that maybe only a handful of people have seen, on rooftops and abandoned buildings, like all across the country, because, you know, these wild photographers are exploring bandos, you know,
Mm-hmm.
taking these crazy pictures and leaving Live a Great Story. So those are the really cool ones that show up every once in a while. And then so kind of simultaneously, we started hosting events in San Diego at a photo studio. So we were like, let's rent out a studio and like invite in photographers, and let's just, like, people like it. People want to take pictures. Let's do that. And then, so it really in the beginning, I would say, was hand in hand with the photography community. We met up with IG Austin, Texas. We did an event with them in San Antonio. So like was a big part of that. I think to now we've hosted probably about 40 events or so, whether we hosted them or other people like under the brand, like we sponsored it or whatever, have hosted a full range of, from photos to like micro meetups to kind of mini conferences. We've done one in Austin with like 150 people. And then now it's kind of growing up into like a real conference and like a real event. But I think going back to your question is that a lot of this came from a lot of the energy of Live. And I think a lot of it that's instilled in the guide and the wording and kind of the energy of Live a Great Story is the flow, and really not knowing, like, people started taking pictures of it and people liked the phrase, but what do you do with that? And like, what can we do with that? How can we make the biggest impact? And there's never been like a really grand vision of like, this is where we're going. We're just going, right? And I think that going back to your original question of like Live a Great Story, it's like, there's not really a finish line, right? None of us know where we're going. None of us know where we're going to end up. But if you can just wake up in the morning and be passionate about it and pursue that road and that experience and that journey with like energy and excitement and community, then you're going to do cool things and it's going to take you where you need to go. And so I think that now, like, so much of the trial and error, and there's been so many ups and downs and lessons and failures, but it's all been about like kind of that flow of just, we're just going and let's like do this together. And that's a big part of like what the community has grown into, is like, let's just go together. Like, you're doing you, I'm doing me. Let's just do it together. Let's spread this. Let's meet people. Let's just connect with people out in the world and keep passing this on, because there's magic around it. And like, let's do it and see what happens.
Yeah, what's interesting is if you haven't seen the sticker and you're listening to this for the first time and you don't know a Live a Great Story, you will probably start seeing it in random places, which I think is really cool. It's like you buy a car and then you thought nobody had this car and then somebody has that car. One of the things that stuck out to me though is with what you were just talking about was that guy in Miami. Currently I'm reading The Tipping Point. And have you read it?
Yeah.
I'm only a little bit through it. So right now I'm in the chapters of like the 6 degrees of people, but then there's those connectors. There's those people that just like know a bunch of people. And that's kind of what puts something over the edge. And it sounds like, to begin with, the second time you shipped any kind of product was to this person, and that was the person to set it off.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. So much can be traced back to that like green shirt and like sticker, like not even pack at that point, just like it was a green shirt and to this dude named Tony. And he just like so much, I mean, thousands of people, you know, like that can be traced back to that one package. It's insane.
I'm so obsessed, or I guess not obsessed, but I'm floored with the butterfly effect and what kind of impact that has. Because you were just talking about somebody almost committing suicide and all of the other things that I've seen just from a brief search of Live a Great Story. I mean, one of the ones was a guy in Haiti talking about doing like helping out kids there, and not just going there, dropping off some food and water, but actually spending time with the people. And it's really cool to hear that a meetup started where it's Instagram style where we want to take photos of the sticker and have some cool things happen. And then all of a sudden it turns into, well, we want to leave an impact on the world. Let's do some really cool stuff. And then it just turns into an inspirational thing.
One thing I've been thinking about a lot lately is how Live a Great Story has made me a better person, and kind of behind the scenes running this company. It's done what it does for other people to me too. And it's done that in such an amazing way to see it. And like, so I don't even think it's necessarily from like a reputation standpoint or to do it because other people think that I should do it this way. It's really this reminder for myself to practice what I think is being a good person, and really like authenticity in who I am and how I treat others and so many things. And it's super micro, like it's not very bold realizations, but it's these kind of like micro decisions that I think is the butterfly effect you're talking about, is how these reminders and like this kind of ownership of your story, like once you feel that and like really, really like that seeps down into who you are, you can't ignore that fact that there's more of like a positive, high vibration, energy that is more or less like the better choice to make. And so really stepping into that as like, I don't know, it's just been an idea that I've thought about only in the last couple of things, and like thinking about it mainly maybe because I've been in a relationship lately or spending more time with my family or whatever, different things. And I'm just realizing that it does that for me and like kind of just gives me that nudge in a certain direction. And it's just kind of cool to think about that it's doing that for me, but it's also doing that for so many other people out there.
There's this idea that I've had in my head recently, just like you, where, especially with my podcast, say it's talking about specific examples of, you hand out the sticker, you turn the sticker around, and I needed to create a new back. We needed to go to another company because of X, Y, and Z. And with different business and entrepreneur podcasts, and I assume you've listened and read a lot on the subject, just judging by what you've been talking about. The idea of talking about higher level concepts as opposed to specifics, where it's more about how you feel and how you approach situations, less than you have to post something on Instagram, hashtag it this many times with this kind of thing with particulars. And when I listen to different entities that are like authorities in like the business area, I think they get some flack for like talking about higher level things. But after pursuing my own endeavors as an I use entrepreneur lightly, but as like a YouTuber and everything, I find that kind of information is way better in most circumstances than, when you post a YouTube video, you have to tag it this way. In your own entrepreneurial journey, would you agree?
100%. There's art and there's science. And there's the science of like, this is how you dip your brush. This is the brush you use. This is how you look at things. This is how you shade, right? And there's like a foundation. But if you're just building on the strategies of it or like the tactics of it, and not like the full strategy of what you're trying to accomplish with this, what do you want people to feel? How do you want people, when they look at your art, like when they look at your canvas, how do you want this to live on past once you've finished, right? There's kind of this idea. And so there is this there's like the very basic like how-to things, but that's only like the very top layer of the coffee, right? Like where the real value. Yeah, like, that's cool. Like if you're starting out, like, let's say on a camera, for example, like you're shooting on video, you have aperture, you have ISO, you have pixels, you have, cut, drag, whatever, scroll. Here's how you do a timeline, all that stuff. But it's like, how do you craft a story? And then even before you're cutting, once you start editing, it's like, how are you asking the questions? How does the person feel while you're interviewing them? What's the back? And so that stuff can't really be taught. And once it's taught, it has to be also personalized. And I think that that's such an important part of it, because I think for like the last 100 years or so, we've been taught that like there's a route, like this is how you do this. Like this is, you do A, B, C, D, E, and you get to Z eventually, right?
Yeah.
But the more that there's diversity and the more that there's opportunity and all these new things that are, I think, pretty new in the world, you don't progress that just by following the books. And it's more of this high level like approach and internalization and concepts and like these kind of bigger words that and once you start talking about that to people, it's really hard to express that, but it's like really an internal thing. And so I definitely understand what you're saying, but it's like, it's really hard. Like you can't stand on stage and talk about these kind of like ephemeral, flow and passion. It's like, how do you distill that down? And so I think it's getting people to this point of like providing enough tactics to then let someone fly on their own to figure out their own art of it. And then that's where like you really like that person can really fly and figure out what that is to them. And then I think that's really where the authenticity and the biggest impact can happen, is once someone takes this foundational skill set and then mixes in who they are and their superpowers and their story and their life, because that's like really the only way that you can do big things is like by being you. You still have to have the skills, but it really takes that like authenticity and like ownership and journey to, I think, make the biggest impact.
Yeah, and obviously there's exceptions, but I think that in order to accomplish like something great, it has to start with stretching yourself out of your comfort zone. And obviously there's those times when you have to get the technical know-how of what you were just saying, like here's how you cut a thing and then use that. But when it boils down to past the technical, you have to get to the story or whatever that is that you're creating. And I think that when Nike said it with the just do it, like that's the thing. But literally a lot of the business endeavors or whatever you want to accomplish in what you're talking about, just like owning your own story, I think just has more to do with just like, you know what, you just got to go for it. And then you have to learn from what happened and put yourself in those situations and know that you might mess up, you might not, but you're going to be a better person after it.
Yeah, there's no real messing up, right? Like I fully stand by the idea that in the infinite game, there's no failure, right? Like you cannot be a failure. Like life doesn't allow for infinite failure. There are learning experiences. There's micro, decisions where you could have made a better decision. But in the grand scheme of it all, like it's all like everybody goes through that until we really need to press that further, I think, and to know that like just like that red F on your paper is such a horrible analogy for life, because it's a final grade, with on a finite game. But there's so much more. There's school, there's a next level, there's another grade, there's another, there's college, there's like that. There's, in the grand scheme of it all, like failure doesn't exist, right? Because and I think on the flip side of that, success doesn't exist either. Like you are never successful. Nobody can have that reach success, because then you're like, then what, right? Like I think that success happens on a daily basis, and even people that were successful before in some capacity on maybe their next venture or their next movie or their next album or whatever might not be as successful. So I think that measuring failure and measuring success like on a they're infinite measurements that we kind of need to move away from, to I think move people into a mindset of kind of that flow, that continued growth, that like the day to day, the second to second, because that's where I think that's where you get it, right? Like when you're worried about how people think of you because you might say something wrong or you might mess up or you might have something in your whatever. It's like, that doesn't really matter, because you can correct that. You can take proactive measures like afterwards to move forward after like that. But if you have that idea that like that's the finality and like I am a failure, or even if I am a success, that's like such a shallow way of thinking.
Yeah. I like what you said about continued growth, because I feel like it's being present and being intentional with what you do from day to day. is when you start making leaps and bounds. But in terms of being intentional, that's where some guidance could come into. Like if you set the goals and then you're like, well, I have this lofty goal, how do I get to that? Then that's when you know how to look up the specific things technically to get to that point. What I'm curious about is, again, coming back to our little interaction before the podcast, when I first met you, is how you introduced yourself. And I think we could kind of tie it into what we've been talking about right now. Is I asked you like, oh, what do you do? And you're like, I'm a professional sticker giver-outer. How has your process of giving out your Live a Great Story, either just telling people about it or the specific sticker, from when you actually had the sticker in your hand and you were going to give it to your first person that you didn't know, to like me like a month ago or something like that, when you're just like, you had it down pat, you know? How has that changed?
I think it for sure flows into everything that we're talking about now.
Yeah.
So in the very beginning of all this, I was working at a bar in San Diego, and I was a door guy at a bar in San Diego. So I was the first person that, everybody interacted with. They're like, get out of my way. I'm trying to go get a drink. You're in my way, right? And it was really not a great experience. Great bar, like amazing family, but like being the door guy was terrible. But I had repeated like high frequency iteration in how to explain Live a Great Story, because I would wear, we had like, it was like for sure a hipster bar, had a vest on, tie, like looking fly. And so I had a button and I would wear, so many times people say, oh, nice button, nice this, nice button, nice shoot, nice socks, like whatever. And it's like the testing of it. And what I realized through all of this is that because the message is so powerful, the least that you can say, me or anybody can say, and let that transfer without clouding that message, right? So literally the best thing is just people are like, oh, I love the sticker, and you just slide it across the table and don't say anything. Like the least you can say is the best thing you can say.
Wow. Powerful stuff.
It puts the ball in their court. It gives them ownership. It lets their mind run, and it creates such an opportunity for people to sit in it. And so those have been the coolest moments, and they've happened a bunch, where it's just like a walk off. And it's such a cool thing because it lets it go in its own way. And I think that the furthering back to like our interaction, I think that what do you do is such an interesting statement. And so there's really a pattern disrupt where if you can, it doesn't really matter what you say. And like, I run a lifestyle brand, or, I tell stories, or what, like,
it's so generic. When you say it like that,
it's so boring.
Wow, man.
Right?
Blowing my mind right now. Yeah.
Yeah. Like everything is really boring. If you like break it down, like to a title of what's your title at your job, that's not very sexy. Most people don't have a sexy title. They're not, it's not cool, but most likely it is really cool when you get into the details. So it's like, how can each of us figure out how to answer that question in a way that creates like a dynamic follow-up that dives deeper? So oftentimes it's not what do you do, it's what's your story. And like that slight change in how you start a conversation creates such a different way, because most people have never thought about that. When I ask people, like, like you can see someone's like gears, and I just ask it once again and just let it sit there and just like practice silence and just like listen and let someone think about it. And sadly, more often than not, the response is, I don't have a story, and then that creates this like whole platform to have a really dynamic conversation about. Now, obviously you're at a bar, you're at a networking thing. It's really hard to do that, but at least creating that space for you're like, what is a professional sticker? I try to add as many like slightly along those same lines, but usually I get pedicures all the time, or I have really cool shoes on, or I have really cool socks, because when I go out into the world and I'm standing in line or I'm walking around or like whatever everyday life, it acts as a really cool focal point for people to say, "Oh, I love your toes. You know, why are they pink?" Or like, and it creates this opportunity to like pattern disrupt for someone and to create a space for someone that might not normally have the courage or, self-confidence or initiative to start a conversation, but it makes it easier for them. And that's also like in a weird way what the stickers and the buttons do, because it creates this connection or this idea, and it's like a focal point. Like, I love your button. Like, that's so easy for someone to say. No harm, there's very little risk they can say to a stranger, but as the recipient of that, it's so powerful because then, they've broken the ice, and then you have the opportunity to connect with that person, and it makes it easier for both people.
I'm already playing a such situation in my head, like, oh, I love your sticker. Well, what's your story? And then it just goes on from there. That's crazy, man.
So there's live, great, story, right? Like, what does it mean to live? How do you define great? And like, what's a story? I think that there's 3 key words in there that are infinitely deep, right? And so it resonates with people. And so I was at a coffee shop in Arizona, and I had my Live a Great Story hoodie on. And I walk in this coffee shop, I'm standing in line, and probably from a solid like 40 yards away, these 2 guys like make eye contact with me, and they just start beelining towards me, like rapid strutting, right? And I'm like, looking around, and they just come up to me, and the guy's like, "Hey, I love your hoodie. Where'd you get that?" And I'm like, "Oh, I got it in San Diego." And he's like, "I love it, man." He's like, "Check this out." He pulls out his phone, and he starts telling me this story about how he both those guys had spent their full day, like full Saturday, essentially moving in refugees from all over the world. So they had like Middle Eastern, African, and somewhere else refugees, and they were like unloading, a sofa or, a bed or whatever. And they were like flipping through, showing me like the U-Haul and these families. And they're like, they were just so energized and passionate about what they were doing. And it all was because from literally like 40 yards away, like across the coffee shop, like it was a big coffee shop, they saw it and it just resonated, and it like gave them that opportunity.
Would you say you were a people's person before you started this whole endeavor?
Not really. I think so. Myers-Briggs, right? And there's like the E and the I. When I very first took the Myers-Briggs, I was an I, and so INTP. But that introverted letter, like, I was almost entirely I, and the only thing that I was E on was initiation or act, something like that. So it was like sparking the conversation. And so I always kind of thought about that, and I realized actually recently that I think that I actually am an E, because technically how you refuel is what that letter is. So if you refuel in private and like by yourself in your room, or if you refuel by talking to others, that's an important thing. And I think I refuel socially instead of the other way around. But going back before Live, back to like probably high school, right out of high school, I really practiced peopling, right? So
that's a great term.
People.
It's not networking. You're already switching everything up. It's peopling.
How to Win Friends and Influence People is like this iconic book. And so my granddad gave that to me when I was like 16, 17. I read it 3 times. And I think I want to reread it again pretty soon, because I want to just practice this more. But it was really intentional practice of how do you deal with people, right? And how do you, a lot of the stuff that we've talked about comes down to communication and people. And so I've definitely put in a lot of work and practice in this, and like how to like ask good questions, or how to be engaging, and like active listening, and actually like valuing people and nodding and like all that stuff. And so, I don't, and then my mom is like the most people person ever. So she like meets friends everywhere, and she, they become lifelong friends. And so seeing her and like not being like that, but also kind of wanting to be like that, and the practice. So it's definitely, I don't think it's a clear cut line, but I think it's just for sure a muscle that you can like work out and practice. And so, and then definitely now, like through Live and everything, for sure have even worked out a little bit more on that.
I'm sure you hear a story a day from some random person.
So many stories, especially here in Austin, because everybody knows Live a Great Story in Austin. Like,
Yeah.
I usually have a button on. I don't really wear shirts or like anything super loud, but I'll talk, like, go out and I'll be talking with people forever, and maybe I don't even have a button, but and they're like minutes into the conversation, enough to have been connecting for a while. They're like, oh, so what do you do? And I just point, and people are just like, whoa, no way. Like, and it's cool. I think it's cool that before people realize that I run Live a Great Story, that they actually like me. I think that's a big thing, because I definitely appreciate that, because there's a lot of people out there who use their social media or their, pre-existing attention to act a certain way, and people have this preconceived notion, so that when you meet them, it's kind of clouded, and maybe they're not the same as they are online or whatever. But I hope that when we have this conversation with normal people out in the world, that people like me, and I'm engaging, and they enjoy talking to me, and then they find out that it's Live a Great Story, not because like I have a big following, or I'm like, not me, but like celebrity. Like, people have this pre-deal around people, so I like that it's kind of the other way around, that I can kind of be behind the scenes. Like, my face necessarily isn't so much on Live a Great Story. Most people don't know that it's a guy, so I think that's kind of a cool aspect there.
I think there's something really important there, because it's time for the watered down version of the MF CEO podcast. Have you ever heard of that podcast? It's fire if you've never heard it. But I recently listened to an episode, and he was talking about sales, right? And this is a guy that's very, very successful now, quote unquote, since we talked about successful. But he started off in sales, and he did whatever you would do in sales, like sell vacuums or sell whatever on the floor. And he found that once he stopped making it about going through the motions of here's what we need the customer to do, and like, if they say this, then we go on this script and all that stuff, and he started making it more about the customer and actually caring to make the customer like a better person or whatever, and just completely leaving out the product in general. I know this sounds really general, but it completely like quadrupled his sales. And it wasn't from a place of, I want to get really rich. No, he literally wanted to start bettering people's lives with whatever product that he was doing. So then he ended up doing nutrition, like powders and things of that nature. Now he has a whole bunch of different businesses, but I am hearing what you're talking about. It's really cool, because I assume that it's more about, and it's just in the message itself, that you're more about helping out whoever it is. And it's so broad and powerful in a way that it can help out that person in ways that you don't even know.
Yeah, I mean, I totally, yeah. It's really, and I think that's the magic of it, is that it does what it needs to do for people. And so just that, like I said, when you just seeing it every day and like thinking about it, that's why I say put a sticker on your phone, or your laptop, or your water bottle, or like I have one on my, car steering wheel. Like, seeing it really does just give you a consistent nudge in the right direction, and it's a little bit at a time. Oftentimes it's very it's subconscious, so maybe you're not even realizing it, but it has that impact, and it makes you think just enough that it inspires or empowers or encourages or motivates people to do that, for themselves. And that's not me. It's not like even really the brand. Like, it's really just the message and the simplicity of it, and like how it inspires people. So, yeah, it's crazy to think that, like, that's why it's magic. Like, that's like a lot of our branding is like, it's magic because it is. Like, if you just, there's so much magic around it. And so like letting it just be magic on its own, and it's hard because like you're building a company, building a movement, building a brand, like making money, creating content, telling story. Like, how do you let that be kind of authentic in itself and like still have that impact? But it's like, it's always comes back to simplicity. It's like, keep it simple, keep it simple, keep it simple. Like, it's too complicated, make it simple, make it simple. Like, even be the hero of your story. Like, that's almost even too much of a digression. It's like, we've tried to come up with these mottos or sub taglines, and it's like just live a great story. Like it's perfect how it is. Like try not, like, and even the circle and there's a script and there's other versions of the message, but like there's something so powerful about the white and black. It's like so simple that it just, like, even if you put color on it, it doesn't have that same impact.
I want to touch on one of the things that you just said about I have some people, or have you ever felt tainted from the idea of making money from this?
So just super recently, in like the grand scheme of 5 years of running the company, like recently in like the last year or so, decided to like really make money off of it. And for a long time, it was not the focus to make money. And really it wasn't the main focus, right? It was just like, let's just, and it goes against it goes back to like the flow idea and the excitement and like the day to day. But what I realized and really stepped into, and actually has also been validated, is that when people pay for something, they value it immensely more than when they get it for free. And selling products that people value, and then they've exchanged their hard-earned dollars for a sticker or a shirt or a flag, they're going to love it so much more than they got it for free. And it's going to have a better impact on their life. It's going to have a better impact on the people they come into contact with. It's going to have a better, gross or net value or impact rather than giving it for free. And so for that reason, I really don't think, I don't have that feeling that this is like a bad thing to make money off of it. And then in turn, making money off of it creates such an opportunity to expand the message, to expand the value, to tell stories. We host a monthly event now, and we're able to do that because we monetize the products, and we're going to host a conference. And by charging people to come to the conference, we're going to be able to make a better conference and create a better experience for people. And so there really is like that. That's such a powerful thing that when you create something that people buy, there's a reason that people want to buy it, and that has a positive impact.
Personally speaking, I just look at what you do with this, and it's so much more than other products that wouldn't bring, I don't know, inspiration or motivation to people. So I think it's like a step above in terms of like, yeah, it's great that you guys are able to earn a living off of this. 2 questions that I ask at the end of each podcast, which I think we've really dived deep into it already, but why do you do what you do?
I do what I do because I love doing what I do. Like I really just want to keep living this life that I live forever. And so I'm not doing this to stop doing this. It's such a simple idea, right? But like I love waking up. I wake up in the morning pretty early. I sit down every morning, most of the time by 8:00 at a coffee shop. I have my coffee. I crack open my computer, and I just like love doing that. And I love working on a business, and I love thinking, and I love strategy, and I love working with other people. And really now, as the brand is growing, working with, contractors, soon to be employees, and building a company that also creates that atmosphere of excitement and energy and positivity, and being able to empower people to do and use their superpowers to move this brand forward. And I just like love that. I love the pursuit. In the end, I think Live a Great Story really boils down to 2 words. It's pursuit and adventure. And I think that for sure comes from me. Like definitely my route is I love the go, like we're just going, like I'm not trying to get there, not trying to stop. Like let's just go and have fun. Go. And then the other part is the adventure part. Have fun, see new things, meet new people, push your comfort zone. Like for travel, I think is a huge part of that. And so I do what I do so I can keep going and keep having fun with it.
I love it. You're the first person to answer with, I do what I do to not, I think I'm going to use a double negative to not do what I'm not doing. However you put it, I'll re-listen to it, but yeah, that was awesome. It makes sense.
I think this is kind of an idea is people like want to build a business to sell it, I think, or to like they have a job so they can do other things on the side. And I definitely understand that. And I feel insanely grateful that my life and my job are like completely intertwined. So there's not very much separation. But it's such an interesting thing because, people like all the time, like, what's the next step here? And literally my answer is like, I just want to keep going. Like we're selling cool stuff. Let's sell cooler stuff. We're hosting events. Let's host cooler events. And we're telling stories. Let's tell cooler stories, right? Like that's why we're doing it.
It's awesome. Keeping it simple. Next question is to get from, let's say it's right when you took that trip to Europe to where you're at now. What are some bits of advice that you would give to somebody to get to where you're at now? And it sounds more like, I guess there's like the whole idea of starting a sticker brand, but like where you're at, like as a person, you know?
I am very inconsistent, right? But meaning I have shiny object syndrome. I like starting new things. I like have I'm massively idea focused. So I bounce around a lot, but the persistency of it and the keeping pushing, maybe it's not every day, wake up at the same time, read the same, 30 minutes a day, drink a gallon of water, but it's just this, I think it goes back into the pursuit idea. It's like, you just got to keep going. Maybe one day you just read one page, the next day you read 2 pages, then you drop down to 1, but it's just like that continued growth. So I think that persistence and then that paired with like chasing the butterflies is a big thing. It's like when you feel that feeling of like excitement and you're like on fire and you're like aligned, and you have that, you got to chase the hell out of that and like really dive in when those feelings come out, because that's you, and like that's your feelings and yourself and everything inside telling you what to do. So it's really paying attention to those like gut, intuition feelings. So those are kind of still like pretty ephemeral. And then I think surrounding yourself with like, to get to where I am now would not have happened without good people and just being hyper vigilant about the people in your life. And if someone's not inspiring you or moving you forward or like encouraging you, like that person's doing the opposite, I think. And so being really cognizant of like who's around you and the energy, and cultivating that is massively powerful.
Awesome. So if people wanted to get stickers or see where you're at on Instagram, where do they go?
liveagreatstory.com, #liveagreatstory, @liveagreatstory, youtube.com/liveagreatstory. Anywhere Live a Great Story is pretty much probably us or came from us. But definitely like start at liveagreatstory.com and then give us a follow on Instagram. Definitely say hi. Don't just be a lurker. Come drop in the DMs and say what's up. And then for sure grab some stickers. If you're listening to this, tell me that you heard this podcast and we'll get you some stickers. Try it out. We'll give you a massive discount because they're not as good when they're free. But yeah, come say hi on social.
And then you have a Facebook group, correct?
Yes. We have a private Facebook group and it's on Live a Great Story, like groups.com/group/Live a Great Story.
Yeah.
You'll find it, but it's pretty cool because it's just people are stoked about the gear and they're doing cool stuff with it. So it's a lot of what we talk about here, like happening inside of a group.
Yeah. And it sounds like it's more encouraging and bringing everybody up at the same time type of thing. So at least from what I could see from the little bit that I was there, which was super cool. Thank you so much for your time. And if you would like to share out this podcast, you could and tag Live a Great Story and Javier Mercedes X. That's Javier Mercedes X on all the social things. And until next time, live a life of abundance and live a great story.